While that happens, I want to remind you that straight after this one is the Game Lynch, which is going to be in this room. And then straight after the Game Lynch is the DevGam Awards, so that should be good. Now I'm excited about this because there's another British person on stage.
Irish.
Well, yeah, okay. All right, all right.
We were at war for 400 years, you might remember.
Well, yeah. So Barry Meade is going to talk about making the room now.
Thank you. Cheers, man. Hello. Can I just quickly ask how many people have played our game or know of our game, The Room? Oh, fair few. Okay, cool. All right, that should make it slightly easier. I don't know about exciting though, Mike, but we'll see what we can do. So yeah, my name is Barry Meade, and I'm a co-founder and director, and really the representative of Fireproof Studios, or Fireproof Games as we're now known. We made The Room sort of very independently in that we used our own money. We didn't have any publishers or anything like this. But I'll go into more about exactly what happened with us, but I just wanted to sort of give you an overview of what I'm going to talk about. After the game became a hit, I mean, you will see when I tell you this story, we kind of stumbled into success with the game. We didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't really have any expectations of the game, but you'll find that out, I hope, as we go on. But I will tell you that I suppose I should tell you about myself. I started making video games in 1992 in Dublin in Ireland, actually working for a German video games company called PCSL. I distinctly remember having to remake 3-color graphics for a German TV game show called Dingsda, which I don't know if it's still on or if that's pertinent, but yeah, if you can imagine, it was back in the 3-colors days, so it was a long time ago. And then in 1993, I moved over to the UK and got my first sort of real job in games with Bullfrog, where I worked on Syndicate Wars and Dungeon Keeper and a bunch of other games. And I've sort of been knocking around the industry since then. But to talk a bit more specifically about Fireproof, Criterion. The 6 founders of Fireproof Games, we all met in Criterion Studios, where we worked on these games and some other ones. We were there for 5 years, so we started working on Burnout 3, and we made Burnout Revenge and Burnout Paradise, and then we left probably about a year and a half after Burnout Paradise came out, I think. Criterion was an amazing place to work. We were all really motivated to make world-class games. They were not a very big studio in comparison to other big studios. Lots of people thought that we were a much more well-resourced, much bigger studio than we were, but when I joined there was only 40 people there, I think. But one of the great things about Criterion was they're very ambitious, and they really wanted to make video games that took on the sort of the giants of the industry who had teams 3 times our size, etc. And we were very motivated. All of us who worked at Criterion were very motivated by that. We really wanted to make very good video games and learn how to do that. And working there really gave us the chance to do that and to see how the work we were doing translated into really good sales, really good review scores. I think all of those games except Black have over 90% Metacritic. But Black was pretty good. I like Black. So it was a great crucible for us to learn in. And one of the things that Criterion were very good at doing was focusing, learning how to focus on your software. Instead of trying to be all things to all men, hone down on something that you want your video game to do better than everybody else, and then sort of work the shit out of that to try and get that to come across in the software. And in Criterion's case, it was risky driving and crashing. That was kind of what Burnout was all about. And so we focused, 50% of all of the energy of our studio was made into making the crashing great and the risky driving mechanic of the game really work and feel really nice to play. So our team, the founders of Criterion, the founders of Fireproof within Criterion, we were the senior artists on the team. So we ran the world team, the environment. So we used to design and build all the worlds for the game. And if you've ever played Burnout Paradise, you'll know that the actual design of the world is the gameplay, because it's all about tricks and stunts and ramps and jumps and secret roads and. So we were very involved with the game, with the actual game design side of it. So we were sort of unusual as an art team in that we had to care a lot about how the game played, and we cared about the cornering of the vehicles, right? So, so that gave us a really nice sort of broad overview of what it takes to make a video game. And we came out of that sort of experience a very focused team. Like, because we ran our own art team within Criterion, we effectively were already a team by the time we left. So unlike other groups who come together as independents, they might all have to get to know each other. We'd already been 5 years down the pipe with each other, and we'd been through all the wars, and we knew our own talents, and we knew how each other worked. And like I said, we ran our own team, so it was a sort of a good staging for us to leave, frankly. So we came to the idea that around this time, this is like 2008, outsourcing started to come into the industry in a big way, where big studios were shutting down or were losing staff, and instead they were outsourcing to teams all over the world. And so we could see that sort of coming down towards us. We could see that Criterion was eventually going to get affected by this, and that possibly our work was going to get outsourced to somebody else. And when that happened within EA, you tended to get spread around, right? You would get posted to other teams. And we didn't want that to happen, because we had an awful lot of accumulated knowledge as an art team that we didn't want to lose if we got broke up. Plus we were all friends, So we wanted to stay together, so we thought we'd have to leave to make sure that happened. So that's pretty much what, one of the main reasons we left. So, yeah, 2008, we had lots of great ideas. We thought to ourselves, okay, well, we have no money. How are we going to survive in the industry? All right, well, let's become freelancers. Yeah, let's become the outsourcers. When we were making Burnout Paradise in particular, we had a huge outsourcing freelance team working for us. We had like 30 people in India and another 15 people in our studio working directly with us. And they were all managed by us. And one of the things we noticed was that much as these freelance artists were very good and very technical, very competent, and they wanted to do a good job, they weren't games makers, they were art makers, and they didn't really think about what they were making in the same way we did, so we couldn't collaborate with them in the same way we could with our own team. And when we were leaving, we thought to ourselves, well, why not be that kind of team, right? An outsourcing team that people can collaborate with about the game, but the actual video game, rather than just the particular parts of the art pipeline or whatever. We had an awful lot of experience in designing worlds, designing video games, and caring about the game we were working on holistically. And so we wanted to be, we basically wanted to be that team that we couldn't hire, the team that we wanted to hire when we were making Burnout Paradise, but couldn't, because people didn't do that. It was really just, people wanted you to give them a bill of assets to be built, and they would go away and do it and come back. They didn't want to think about the work. They didn't want to design anything for you. They wanted you to tell them what to do. And so we wanted to be a team who was sort of the flip side of that, where we would come up with the ideas, and we would do your research, and we would do your design for you, and then we would go ahead and build it. And we thought that might be an interesting model. That might actually work. So this is one of our assumptions. So we left Criterion in June, July, August 2008 we left with two plans. Short term, to become a great freelance art team. Long term, to make our own video games. That's what we want. That's why we were a team. That's why we were getting together. We wanted to make our own games. We didn't know how we were going to do that, but we wanted to. So these were our plans in August 2008. In September 2008, the world economy crashed. And all of our plans kind of went out the window. We kind of saw that it was as if all of the money got sucked out of the industry within 2 months of this happening. I mean, companies were immediately starting to close down. People were getting laid off left and right. So, yeah, we were kind of nervous about all that, I have to say. Because before that, companies like EA were spending fantastic amounts of money on freelance artwork. And so we thought, well, there'll be work out there for us. So I guess the way you could describe it is we wanted to be dev-based freelancers, right? That was our sort of skill set. We wanted to be able to sell our skills as AAA developers to people and not just AAA artists, if that makes sense to you. So we thought we'd focus on high-end titles. I'll just move quickly on. Here's some of our clients. They range from indie studios to really quite big studios. Some of them are no longer with us. They're exactly the kind of studios I'm talking about that fell by the wayside over the years after we started up. But we did get to work on some really cool games with some really nice people, really talented guys. So if I was to say what was our plan was probably, we had hoped, we still didn't know how to accumulate money. We weren't businessmen. We didn't really know how to make our own video games or even see the beginning of that. So, but we thought maybe one of the things that might happen for us is if we got out into the industry and mixed it up with people and started doing really good work and got our name known, that maybe a publisher might give us a co-development deal or something like that. We kind of expected the Hollywood model to come to video games, right? If you know how that works, if someone's making a movie, they sort of form a temporary production company for that movie. They all work together and whatever for a year or however long, and then they break up and that's it, and they're done. But the idea of it is that you hire, when you create that movie, you hire the best people you can to make it, whether they know each other or not. And so we kind of could see that model coming to games because the studio model of having 400 people in a giant room working on a game was just ridiculously expensive, and that was one of the options we thought might come to pass. It kind of didn't. It still really hasn't happened. But it was an interesting way to look at it, I suppose. And to be fair, by following that idea, we did actually come good in the end. So, having said all that, because our long-term goal was to make video games, our own games, we couldn't grow the studio. We didn't want to grow the studio into like a 100-man, 200-person monster, that's just chucking out random artwork for people left and right. We wanted to make very specialized stuff. We kind of wanted to keep it boutique, to be a boutique art operation. So we turned down work that would have required us to hire people, which is actually the opposite of what you're supposed to do in the freelance outsourcing business. So you can argue whether or not that was a good idea. It certainly meant that we were never going to make much money, but we still did that because like I said, our focus was on the long term, and that was if we were ever going to get the chance to make our own video game, we did not want 100 artists sitting in a room with nothing to do and us having to pay for them. So instead we went the other way, where we only hired stars. We wanted to hire people who were really, really good, and we hired them for them, not because we had a contract we had to fulfill. We wanted them as part of our studio, and we would have hated to have seen them go. That's why we hired. Excuse me. So we had a different hiring policy, I guess, and a growth policy, which was no growth at all. But it meant that we got to do the work we wanted, how we wanted, in the way we wanted, with the people we wanted. So it served a purpose. Yeah. So at the end of 4 years, we realized we had thought we were going to make tons of money. We thought that after 2 or 3 years we were going to have hundreds of thousands in the bank, and we were going to make an Xbox Live game, and then we were going to go on PSN, and it was going to be awesome. We never got anywhere near that. At the end of 4 years, we had exactly £100,000 in the bank for all of our 4 years of work, for all of working with all of these different companies.
which is quite dispiriting. So we thought to ourselves, well, look, we either accept we're never going to make a video game, or we look at the budget we have and figure out how we can make something with the money that we have. Just anything, just some game that we can put out. And the only way we could do that was on mobile. And mobile, we didn't know the first fucking thing about mobile. We didn't play the games, we didn't even respect the games. We didn't really know anything about it at all. However, we did know it was bloody cheap to develop for, and that Unity had just come out at this stage. And Unity was actually becoming a tool that people would genuinely use, because the competition was fierce back then, right? So the combination of Unity being free and mobile being just very cheap to develop for and publish on meant that this was going to be our platform. And we were like, okay, right, we've got this is an avenue for us, right? So we can put something together for this. So we decided to do that. Because we didn't know anything about mobile, we thought, okay, well let's try a few different things. And we said to ourselves, we hired a programmer in December. He came in January, and we said, okay, January we're going to make one demo. February we're going to make a completely different game. And then in March, we're going to make another game again. And of those three, come April, we'll decide which one we wanted to make, because we knew he had exactly enough money for the programmer to last a year. After that, he was going to fuck off. So this is all we had. We had a year window. So we said we'll make 3 ideas, and then we'll choose the best one at the end of it. So I'll just go through them now. Our very first one was called Tiny Planets. Now, if you were to ask Mark, our designer, about this game, he would say, this is the kind of game you're supposed to make on mobile, right? It's cutesy, it's simple to play, well, pretty much that, actually. That was kind of our view of what mobile games were, and we thought this was the kind of thing that would appeal. It hasn't got any depth, it's very quick to play it. And it was kind of fun, but one of the things that did come out of this demo, and this was our January demo, was it was tactile. The idea of the game was, see this little rocket in the middle? You were supposed to get that rocket into another planet, and you did that by using the gravitational slingshot effect, the gravitation from other planets. And it was a really simple game when you just sort of, you'd use your finger to whisk the rocket in the direction you wanted it to go, and then you could buy all these add-ons onto the rocket that would sort of, make it more powerful or move faster and all of this. And the thing that it did quite well was that whatever we made, we wanted to make it tactile. We wanted to make it something that the touchscreen would, that really made use of the fact that mobile was a touchscreen, because at the time, everyone was trying to make video games with virtual D-pads. And they were trying to do very traditional console games, and we thought that was just a bad idea. So we wanted to make something that was very mobile focused, and that would sort of make the touch interface sing. So we did that. And the one thing that this game did achieve was it was tactile. It felt tactile. It was a tactile idea, so it played up to what mobile did quite well. Has anyone ever played Angry Birds Spaced? Or does anyone know what it is? Right, it's that fucking game. And it came out the month after we made this demo, Angry Birds Space came out, which is a real, having been in the industry a long time, this is just a reinforcement that ideas are cheap. Good ideas are cheap. Good ideas are easy. And if you have it and you think it's fucking awesome, well, 10 other people probably have it too. They just aren't able to make it. So actually executing an idea is far more valuable and means you're much more likely to be successful than just having great ideas. And if you have a really good one, you need to get it out of you really quickly, because you certainly are not the only person who has it. And I'm not saying this is a great idea, but I'm just saying it as a point. Our second game, this is our February game, was called Puzzle Box. And the idea of this was, if you've ever seen Chinese puzzle boxes, or I think that there's Japanese do have their versions as well, these are like sort of similar to jewelry boxes, except that in order to open them, you had to do like anything from 10 different movements to 100 or 150. The complexity of these things is incredible. But why we thought this would really work for mobile is because it's all about touching them. If you pick up one of these boxes and you have to actually physically manipulate all of these different switches and sliders to get them open, and we thought that's very tactile, so that would actually translate well to a touch device. And so that, this idea was the one we were excited about before we made it. We thought this would actually be the best of the three, but we actually never went on to make the third one. There was no March idea, because this just worked immediately. As soon as we started making it, we were like, this is it, let's just continue. Let's just make this game. And that then went on to become The Room. In fact, the game was called Puzzle Box until about a month before release. We just couldn't come up with a name for it, and so we just made something up. I was in a lift going down for a smoke one day, and I just went, what about The Room? And then I went, okay, let's get The Room. I'm just saying this stuff to let you know that it's very easy when you have a hit. People expect that all of this stuff is like some master plan, and it was all very laid out. And what I try to get across to people is like we came into work every day and literally made it up every single day. We didn't even have a game design. We just thought, this feels good. This is a good idea. Let's try this idea, and we just kept putting stuff in, taking stuff out. I don't want to say it wasn't methodical. Like Mark, our designer, is very methodical, but it was not planned in any way, none of it. We didn't even know it was going to be a horror-themed puzzle game. We just knew it was going to be something about these Chinese puzzle games, puzzle boxes. And so everything else, like everything that isn't a Chinese puzzle box in the game, we just made it up. Week on week, day after day, just stuff got in the game. And the reason why it's a horror-tinged game is because we were frustrated horror game designers. We wanted to, like the game we were going to make on PSN and Xbox Live was probably going to be a horror game, because we thought horror had been, we were big fans of Res Evil and these kind of things, and that series had turned to shit, so we were like, maybe we could make a sort of small indie horror game that was sort of celebrate that genre or whatever. Of course, we never got that. We never got the budget to make that happen. So the reason The Room has all of these horror, H.P. Lovecraft type elements in it is because we just had all of that stuff in our head. And so whatever we were going to make, we were like, let's horrify it. Yeah, cool, that'll work. So we did that. Now, the interesting thing for us, coming from, you have to remember, we were 5 years into our 6th year doing console, and I've been making console and PC games for like 17, 18 years at this stage. After 6 weeks, I took this game to see Apple for them to see it. Now, coming from that world of PC and console, working with big publishers and AAA, the very idea that a bunch of people could get a game together in 6 weeks and be proud enough of that work to show it off to Apple was kind of crazy for us, because we're used to like months and months of T-slices and trying to get your stuff approved by people, and the headaches that you would have just to make a single decision when you're working on a big game. But yet after 6 weeks, starting from nothing, we had nothing whatsoever. We didn't even know like what the game was going to be about in our very first day. Yet we were so convinced that it was good. I was like, I'm going to GDC, I'm going to take a demo, and I'm going to meet with Apple and show it to them. And they pretty much liked it immediately. The guys that I met, they didn't really have much to say to us other than, this is really good, keep going. And honestly, that was all we really needed to hear. Like I said, this is only after 6 weeks, right? So, and we thought, I knew that the game at that stage was interesting enough that people would like it. And I also thought to myself, well, if this is what we could do in 6 weeks, imagine what it's going to be like in 6 months, right? And that's pretty much the budget we had. We had 6 to 7 months of money left after this stage. So that was quite a surprise. And actually just meeting with Apple and getting that reaction from them, it gave us a lot of confidence. I mean, we didn't get cocky, but we at least thought it's not rubbish. Because people had warned me before I met them, they're going to rip your game apart, they're going to tell you everything that's wrong with it, just expect a horrible meeting. And they weren't like that at all. They just said, this is cool, keep going, come back to us when it's, when you've got it in a different state. And so that's what we did. We just kept going, and most of the stuff that happened was just, like I said, it wasn't planned. It was just a fluke. It was just what we wanted to do on the day. It was like, what do we feel like doing this week? All right, let's put this in. Oh, this is a cool feature. Let's advance that. That's pretty much the way we approached it. But I don't want to make it sound like it's haphazard, because there's a real power in developing like that. And I know this from my days when I was in Bullfrog, where you literally just make what you feel like making. You come up with ideas that resonate with the exact software you're playing that day, not what you wrote down 6 months ago. What you're playing today, you have a look at it, you play it, you get a feel for it. That inspires new ideas, and those are the ideas that we would respond to, and that's kind of how we ended up making it all up as we went along. I mean, that's literally what we did. We allowed ourselves to be inspired by the software we were playing every day, and we left it open-ended, so we didn't have any restrictions on ourselves about what we were going to do. The only restriction we had was money and time. We knew we had 6 or 7 months, and whatever we did, it had to be done by then, and not only finished, but polished. So it wasn't a lot of time, and I should say the room was made by 2 guys full-time. So because the rest of us were all working to keep the company going, freelance. We'd hired this programmer who could work on his own, and then Mark we took offline and put on the project full time because he's a great designer. And so Rob and Mark worked on this alone. 50% of the game was made by them pretty much, and then the rest of the game was all put together by all of us. Just playing the game every day and talking and chatting and throwing ideas around. And then when we can, we would help and put in artwork into the game and whatever. But it was all quite ad hoc. It wasn't, if you'd walked into the studio right then, you would have thought that Mark and Rob were the least important thing happening, because the rest of the studio was 10 artists beavering away on some pretty big titles trying to churn out artwork. So again, even in that respect, there was still no plan. We were just winging it, basically. So I'll quickly bring you I'll skip this slide. No, I won't actually. I'll go on to this now. How am I for time, by the way? Shit. I just quickly want to talk about why we work the way we do, and sort of just why. We've sort of found out subsequently, especially because we started getting invites to conferences that we'd never really attended before because the game was a hit, and I get asked a lot when I come to conferences, can you stand up and explain how to have a mobile hit, or how to make your game go large or go viral, or how do you make a paid game sell 1 million copies, and da-da-da. I don't know any of that shit. Like, we don't know that stuff. We didn't know that before. We don't really know that now in the way that we could lay it out for people. This is why I want to emphasize to people that you don't need to know everything. You don't need to be great at everything in order to make a good video game. If you produce a good video game, that will actually bring you a shit ton of benefits that you don't have until you've created something really good. So it's all very easy to get caught up in, if you go to mobile conferences these days, they will tell you that being a good developer is like number 10 on a list. But you have to be great at all this other stuff first, from marketing to PR to business to networking and whatever. We've never believed any of that is true. We've never believed it before we made the room. We still don't believe it now after the fact. Now we get called arrogant for believing that, but it's like, this is what we've always believed. Ever since we met in Criterion, we coalesced. The reason our team came together is because we bloody love making really good games. We really like that. And we really think that that's the beginning and the end of your success, is how good your video game is. Is it going to attract an audience or not? Your game needs to be good enough to attract an audience on its own, without PR, without marketing. If it isn't, none of that stuff is going to help you. You're just going to spend more money and fail anyway. Because at the end of all of that tail, you could line it all up. You could spend as much as you wanted. You could get the best people working on it. But at the very end of that, the very tip of that spear, is someone on Steam or on the store paying cash to you directly for a video game that they either like or they don't like, that they find attractive or they don't find attractive. Now, an awful lot of the mobile industry now is actually, they're attracting kind of non-gamers, right? The kind of people who click on a banner to download a free video game are not the kind of gamers that we were after. We just thought to ourselves, well, look, mobile is massive. We're never going to get the reach of those huge free-to-play games. So why don't we make games for people like us who would like there to be games on mobile that are, interesting in their own right, but aren't really there, that the industry isn't really producing. And that's why we made a paid game, because we didn't want to appeal to people who don't like video games. We don't want to make video games for people who don't want to pay for video games, right? So we want to make games for people, well, either like us, who are we're hardcore gamers, or people who just enjoy nice visuals and a nice experience and whatever. And there are a lot of those people out there. There's way more people who want to play games for nothing. And, fair play to them. But they're not our crowd. They're not the people we're chasing. That just seems pointless, right? To go after people who aren't interested in what you do. So we always had it in our head that it makes logical sense. There must be X amount of millions of people who own phones or excuse me, who own pads or phones, who just want to play a good game. They know what a good game looks like, right? They're schooled in it, they're interested, they might even read gaming press, right? They're the kind of people we chased. But what we did was we made our game as accessible as possible, right? So the thing was, if you make a game that's truly a mobile game, that really uses the touch screen very well, you've already kind of made it accessible, right? So, the room is basically just a sequence of swipes and taps, and it's all of the language that your grandmother knows on mobile, right? This stuff is not difficult at all for anyone. So we saw the touch screen as a sort of a great barrier lower. It sort of it makes the game much more inviting for people because they know how mobile stuff works. If you think about older people, they find a phone much easier to use than a computer now. If you had to teach, if you were teaching one or the other to both, it's much easier to use an iPad than it is a PC or even a Mac. Just by making something that's truly a touchscreen game, that's designed around and based on the touchscreen itself, you're actually making your game hugely accessible already. And then you work on the content to try and make that interesting. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to get that across to people as well, is that there's an awful lot of pressure on developers these days to be great at absolutely everything, and that if you're not mixing with VCs and with business people and whatever, you're not like in the industry anymore or something. I've had people tell us, oh, you shouldn't be telling people that they should make paid games, or you shouldn't tell them that your story, because you'll give them this wrong impression about the way the mobile market works. And I can't really respond to that, because I'm like, well, fuck off, it worked for us. So you can't expect us not to go out there and say, this is our story, this is what happened to us, and this is what can happen for you. If I was standing up here to say, you need to go out and get 10 million VC money, then you need to get another 10 million to spend on user acquisition or whatever, excuse me, you're going to... What? Oh, sorry, right, yeah, thank you. No, it's fine. You're still going to have a tremendously difficult job. You think people who do that don't fail? You just don't read about them. They fail all the time, those games, all the time, and they fail hard, and they fail big. Like, they take whole companies down with them, millions get spent. You don't read about them. You just hear about Clash of Clans, right? So, but paid games, what do you read about paid games? Oh, they failed. There's no success. People like us are outliers or whatever. Blah blah blah. Well, I'm sorry. It's hard to have a hit no matter what. It's always been really hard to have a hit in video games. Don't let that put you off. If you're motivated, you fail 5 times before or 10 times before you get a hit. That's the story of everybody. right? So don't be put off. Thank you. Don't be put off just by that. You know, have a bit more behind it than I just want to be a success, right? Just think about the games that you all have played in your lives, what they've meant to you, what kind of emotions, what kind of a state, what kind of headspace you're in when you play them, what they give to you. You know, I've described before as like the 2 a.m. in your underpants moments, right? Where you're playing a game and you just fucking love it. Like, that's what you should be chasing, not metrics or money, or chase that feeling in your software, right? Because you have to replicate everything you love about video games in your software. That's the job we have as developers. You need to get across to your audience why you love video games and why they should love them. If you bring too much commercial pressure into what you're doing, you're just gonna, you're gonna derail that. You're gonna, all of that, arty, flim-flam, hazy, gut feeling stuff just gets lost. People just want to see concrete data, and, you will lose the audience right there and then. You will lose them if you don't retain some really solid thing to hang on to. And if you listen to the Supercell guys, they will tell you the same thing as well. Those guys crafted that game like nobody's business. They worked it and worked it and worked it. They wanted it to be the best video game you could buy on mobile, right? That's what they did. It was no fluke, and it wasn't because they had a great marketing budget or whatever, right? They did it the right way. And this is what we find across the industry. There's no one who made a cynical game, who made a game cynically, that went on to see massive success, right? There just isn't. I mean, if you look at, like anything from GTA, like I said, also to Clash of Clans, these are all video games made by people who wanted to celebrate why video games are great. They wanted to get across in their stuff why they love video games, and they wanted to give it to an audience. And that's exactly what you should try and hone in on. And that's why when we were making our game, we ignored all of that advice about mobile. We just didn't employ anyone. We never went to see any publishers. We didn't take money from people. We didn't look for money for people because we thought they're all crazy, basically. We thought that the whole idea that a developer now is a businessman is like, well, okay, that is true to an extent, but it's not true for the audience. The audience just wants your game. They don't really care about you or what your plans are or how much money you have. Your game either works or it doesn't. It either attracts them or it doesn't. So I would just, if you're in the position of making your first video game, don't lose sight of the fact that there's nothing will dictate your success more than the actual game that you make, and not to lose sight of that. I'll very quickly go to the end now. Excuse me. Our public reception was great. I'll get through this though. Forget that. It's just slapping us on the back. This is our first sales, right? So here's our release. On release, we struck it lucky. Apple featured the game all over the world. It was editor's choice in, I don't know, maybe 80% of their territories. So we had huge sales right from the off. But of course, as soon as that week is over, it all crashes back down again. But that was fine. We were already quite elated at this. But if you see this dot here, this is our first sales drop. So it's really quick. We'd already kind of lost confidence at this stage. So we dropped the price from $4.99 to $2.99. Sales went up a wee bit, kept going to December. This enormous spike you see at the end was Apple gave us iPad Game of the Year, which meant that we were on the front of the App Store for 2 whole weeks during Christmas. So, and this, really high spike right in the middle is Christmas Day when everyone got their new iPads, and we just went, oh wow, yeah, Game of the Year, awesome. So we did really well out of that. I mean, we got so much of our sales, as you can see, was just from those 2 blocks from our initial launch week and then here. And once you've got that, you're a going concern, right? Because even though your sales crash, the games on mobile never stop selling, right? So even if you sell 2 a day, you're pretty much going to sell 2 a day for a year, 2 years, 3 years. It's not like traditional media in that way. So, I mean, there are a lot of developers now who are making money simply by throwing tons of stuff out onto the shop. Excuse me. I'll just quickly take this. minute. Yeah, I mean, right at this end, this is some of the stats of the game that we released. We compared and contrasted the Room with the Room 2. We released this about a year ago. And this stuff is actually on our website if you ever want to look at it closely, but it's quite interesting. The difference that we had. I'll get past that now. Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. I'm 0. Perfect timing. So yeah, if you've got any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Hi, thanks for the talk. When you started the Room 2, was it also more like a trying out approach, like the first one, or was this more planned?
It was, we still don't plan. I mean, we don't have design meetings or design documents in the studio at all. We just get at it. We start building stuff immediately and sort of work it out that way. But the Room 2, remember now, what we didn't have to do with the Room 2 was crystallize the idea of the game, right? Because we'd already set the tone, the visual style, the audio style, the gameplay, the control system, everything about it had been set by then, so we didn't have to work those things out anymore. So the Room 2 is different in that we were able to just concentrate on the content. So that's why, we wanted to step that up. We wanted that to step up a gear. We wanted there to be a noticeable visual difference between the two games, and so the Room 2 is a more complicated game to make for that reason, because we had more time. We were able to spend it on small changes and large to make the game a bit better, really. So the Room 2 is much more about cementing what we'd done, I guess, whereas the first one was about proving an idea, I guess.
Hey,
Hello.
How did you come up with the riddles and the level design to specific? Did you make actual physical prototypes?
No, we never did that. Excuse me. We're probably unusual as a bunch of artists in that we do all our concepting in 3D, right? So none of us are really concept guys, like painted. We're all 3D modelers. So when we want to come up with an idea, we build it and then we check it out. We don't really have that stage of working something out, and then we just build it first off, and then we'll discuss that. We'll discuss what we've built, and then use it that way. So we find that really works for us because we've been doing it a long time, so we're pretty fast at doing white box models and stuff like this. So the game is basically white box for most of the development, and then it becomes a game full of artwork towards the end. But until that moment, probably over 50% of the dev time, it's just white box, playing and testing. Which is kind of frustrating because, in a real sense, we don't know what the game is going to be like until just before release. And we're still doing that now at the Room 3, right? Like the Room 3 is almost finished, but until the day it's finished, not really sure what it's like. We can look at it and go, this bit is cool, that's cool, but we need to see it all the way through, right? So, and like I said, to us, it's a very natural way to work. It's just to respond to the software always and work off what the software is telling you, right? So, sorry?
Very inspiring.
Well, we're lucky enough to be in that position, right? And so not everyone can do that, I guess. And I should also say to people generally, like, this is just our story. If you go to another talk or other conferences, you get someone else's story. You guys decide what works for you and what doesn't. It's not like I'm saying that it worked for us, it'll work for everybody. Obviously, that's not how the world works, right? So, but you might learn, there might be bits of what we're saying that make sense to you in the context of what you're all doing yourselves, so.
Hey there, thanks for your talk and congratulations for your great game. I wanted to ask, you got Game of the Year, which is like huge, and now you did the second one and you're making the third one. How did Apple react on that? Did you consult them and ask for promotion again? I mean, they like...
No. You don't ask Apple anything.
Well, did they consult you?
You receive from Apple. You don't. There's no. No, Apple. Look, Apple are a massive company. I mean, their games is only a slice of what they do, and they're a hardware company. At base, they're a hardware company, and so they're not. Their focus, I guess, certainly when we started in 2012. They're only really beginning to pay attention to video games on mobile. And things like they're very good now, but back then I think it was quite basic, I guess is what you'd say. You'd meet someone, they'd play your game, they'd give you some advice, they'd go away. Now when it comes to things like whether they're going to feature you or support you, that has nothing to do with you. All of those decisions are taken to sell hardware. That's it, right? So, and also because the company's so huge, you could talk to someone in the UK, but three guys in America have their own plans for that week or whatever. So they're a huge going concern, and they have their own internal machinery working to decide what gets put on where. But I can tell you that the Apple guys, that everyone I've dealt with, really cares about good video games. Like they're gamer people. They're not random guys from the Apple R&D. They're people they've taken from the industry who get it. And so they've always given us really good advice. But we don't have we're not calling each other. We honestly have very little contact with Apple or Google. As we're getting towards finishing a game, we'll give them a call. That tends to be, we'll send them an email saying, hey, we're doing this, and it'll probably be finished then, and there'll be a bit of a conversation, and maybe we'll send them a build. No, Apple, the storefront, the Apple storefront, and all of that is not. It's like, forget up for sale, which is what some people think. It's not even up for discussion, right? So I've met many developers who think there's some sort of cabal, and that people are greasing palms or paying more, or bribes or whatever, and nothing could be further from the truth. Like Apple are almost disinterested in what you're doing. They're so huge. They don't, there's no bias with them. They're very honest. They've got no reason to care about one developer over another whatsoever. Because even if they went and sat on EA for 2 years and did everything EA said, it would mean nothing to their bottom line, right? They're just so huge. So they're kind of protected from those forces, which is really good. It's really good for people like us, because they genuinely are protected from the weight of people like EA and Activision. It just has no truck with them. So for us, it's a great leveler to be on mobile and to work with Apple, because we get a much fairer shake from them than we would maybe from a retail store, for instance.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, hi.
Hello.
I think it's always inspiring to listen to people that make the games they love, but there are lots of scenarios where you could easily just sold 1,000 copies of The Room. Would you still have made The Room 2 if you had not a financial success with the game?
I don't know, that's a hard question. I mean, it's a theoretical question. So I couldn't give you I couldn't tell you exactly what we would have done in that situation. I can guess. I don't know. I do know that when we finished The Room, we were very proud of it, right? So we didn't have, like I said, we had no marketing budget or publisher or whatever, so our expectations were very low. But I do remember saying to the guys just before we uploaded it to Apple that in my view the game was really, really good, and we made a fantastic title. And if the game never sold anything, right, we always had this idea that it would at least be a good calling card for our outsourcing business, and it would make us, we made something and it's good and it's polished and people would know, oh, these guys are, they're good craftsmen, we should work with them. And that's why we again, that was one of the other reasons that motivated us to make sure that the software was as good as we could possibly make it, was because it was going to be our calling card in the future when it inevitably didn't sell, right? Because no one we knew making paid games was making money then. So like we knew lots of developers making mobile games, and they were all failing. So we just expected the game to come out and trail off and nothing would happen, just like everybody else. Even if we felt ourselves that we loved it and we thought it was really cool, an audience is a whole other ballgame. And just on to your point, though, you said making the game you like, and because this is something you hear a lot in the industry, you know, you're not, people would say, oh, just make the game you like, and then other people saying, no, don't do that, that's a really bad idea. I mean, when we say that, we don't mean, like, I have awful taste in music, right? I listen to some horrible stuff, and I would never put that in a video game that I make, right? That's just dumb, right? If you're talking about that kind of just make the game you like, forget it, you know, then don't expect success, right? It's not about you when you're making a video game. It isn't. Even if you say, we're making the game we want to make, and then it isn't about you. You're crazy, right, if you think that. Like, GTA isn't about you, but you love that, you know? There's countless games we all play that aren't made specifically for us, but we love them. So what you're supposed to do is make a video game that you agree with a large audience on is a good video game. You're not just you on your own. Like, I think it's good, therefore it's amazing. You're supposed to say, this is something that me and people like me and people in my who buy games like I do would agree is a good game. That's the game you're supposed to make, not this is my game. You know, some people can do that and they do see success. But I guess what I mean is, like, you make a game, be commercial about, think commercially about what you're doing, but put in all of the things that you particularly love. Try and work all of those things that motivate you and inspire you into your game, but in a way that lots of people will find acceptable, not just you and your mom or your brother or your best friend. That's boring, right? I remember being a child and playing video games, and what I loved about it was the fact that it was somebody else's work coming into my life and brightening it up. I didn't want them to talk about my life or what I was interested in. You know, it's the group participation side of video games is really important. It's a really big motivator, and it's, you know, for me it's like automatic. I automatically want to make stuff that lots of people will like. It's not you know, it's not about masturbating. It's like, some people can do that and have managed to do that, make very quirky games that went over really big and like that were very personal. But they would be, I think, the exceptions to the rule. I think broadly you have to try and make video games that you love and respect and you want to play yourself, but that aren't exclusively made to your taste, because that's boring. That's like so self-centered, you know. Anyone? Bueller? Nope. Any more questions? Hey, one.
Hello, how are
Hello.
you? I just was wondering if you guys had any thoughts in the future of working on kind of restricted platforms like the iWatch or anything?
No, probably not. When you say restricted, do you mean just the iWatch, or do you mean other things? Like, what are the ones?
I was just thinking more, like when you look at games like Lifeline, where it's really immersive,
Yeah.
but it's on such a restricted platform, if you think you could do something like that.
No, I mean, probably no. We did the iWatch doesn't motivate us. We don't get excited by it, so that's why we're not doing it. I mean, that's not to say that we won't do work that we know won't make us money, because we do that. When we do that, you know, we actively do that. But it has to excite us. There has to be something interesting about the actual platform or or how we're approaching it that, you know, we try and if that's not interesting, then we wouldn't really be interested in making something for it. Like, we made a game for the Gear VR, knowing full well it would never make any money. But we wanted to make a VR game, and we thought the Gear VR was a cool device, so we did that. But the watches don't really inspire us. That's not to say people won't come up with great stuff. I think they will. Excuse me. But we like, you know, we're kind of nerds. We like good visuals, and we like to, you know, we want to be able to see all of that. And you know, yeah, we like to make nice 3D graphics, I guess. That's kind of our forte, so I think we'll always stick to stuff that will allow us to do that, yeah.
Just a very quick question with a quick answer, probably.
Again.
I bought the Room 2 when it was on sale, but I haven't played it. How many
forgive
people
you.
bought your game and never started it? Do you have statistics about that?
Sorry, say that again?
Do you have statistics about how many people bought your game but never started it?
Not in my head, but they may be somewhere. We do have very basic tracking software built into the game, but it's very like I don't think we've ever even looked at it. I don't know is the honest answer. It might be somewhere, but I'd probably have to dig it out for you. Anyone else? Anyone? Leave it at that. Thanks.